Welcome to Paul Lawson Chats, a podcast for helpers. In each episode, we'll hear stories from folks from various companies and organizations who are making a real difference by bringing positive change and infusing radical good into their workplaces, communities, and world. Hey all, it's Paul. Today I've got my amazing friend, Rob McKinney, construction safety advocate for SALUS, also a founding member of the ConTech Crew Podcast, which I'm sure some of you guys have heard, and then is also building out the Frontline Focus podcast with SALUS right now. Rob, that's the longest intro I've given for somebody yet. You've got a lot of stuff going on.
Hey, I appreciate the kind words, Paul. Amazing is probably too much. Maybe some people would say annoying, or it's hard to say, man. I've been doing work a long time. It's good to have the recognition.
I had the chance to jump on ConTech Crew. That's how you and I first met. Oh man, when was that? 6 months ago now? 9 months ago?
Sounds right.
It's been a minute, but I just you and I just hit it off in that podcast. I mean, Jeff and I spoke quite a bit, and he was the original one who got me connected to it. But I think you and I had some very similar kind of background elements, and about how we landed here in the work that we're doing. So I've just appreciated your friendship and your connection and everything that you do. And I mean, you know this world. You've been part of the advocacy world in construction for a while now, and I think you have an incredible story. So I was excited to get you on here.
Hey, I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you, man. We're kindred spirits, like you said. We both have very close backgrounds with the work we did prior to our careers in construction, and we've got some pretty similar scars that, when people start. It's interesting. It's like scars are the new tattoos, because
they are.
Not everybody wants to show their scars like they want to show their tattoo. But once you start comparing, you're like, oh, yeah, how'd you get that one? Like, let me tell you about that.
I know.
Let me tell you about this time I got yelled at so bad. Or it's really interesting when you get in private rooms and people start talking.
Yeah. You're exactly right.
Common.
Yeah. I don't have any. Do you have tattoos? I don't have any tattoos. I've got scars for days, but I don't have tattoos.
No tattoos. I have been deathly afraid of needles my entire life.
So
I'm fascinated by them. I want them, but every time I even get close to the parlor and I'm looking at that little thing, like, how many times that needle going to stick inside me?
Yeah, a lot. A lot, yeah. I'm the only one of the, let's see, my brother's got a couple of them. Actually, you know what? I don't know if my sister has one, but I just didn't. My wife and I have come up with all sorts of different fun ideas. Like, she's got a million ideas for tattoos, ones that she wants. And I'm like, I can't. Here's I'm a big dude. So if I ever lose weight someday, which I'm planning on it, but like if I ever do and I get a tattoo of like, I don't know, like autumn leaves that transform into, I forgot what my emo tattoo idea from the 2000s was. I think it was like autumn leaves starting up on my shoulder that transform into like sparrows that then transform into like lines of music down my arm.
Nice.
It's so emo. But I'm like, if I end up losing all that weight, those sparrows are going to start turning into like mosquitoes. Like, it's just
they can do some work on it. It's crazy what they can do now to change them, bring them back to life. Yeah. It's a whole different world.
We're talking about, the scars in our life that have happened from our story and all of that. And I think that you haven't, I've heard your story. I've heard some of it, and I'm interested to hear when we start talking about how did you end up in the world of advocacy and construction in the mental health space? And I know that you came in through safety, right? Like, it was safety first, and then it opened up beyond that and really incorporated your story. So let's go ahead and get started with what is Rob's background? What is your story, and how did you get where you are now?
So let's say it's a choose your own adventure, right? I have a degree in religion and philosophy. Thought I was going to preach or teach. I did a stint in the U.S. Peace Corps and realized I'm not going to preach or teach. Didn't really work out. So I'm 28 years old, coming back to Atlanta, and my dad was a banker. Bankers bank construction people, so he had a connection, right? I went and interviewed with a gentleman, Jim Wilkerson, who was looking for somebody back in 2001. I was contemplating, well, maybe I could go teach high school. I used to work at REI and selling gear. Maybe I'd do that. Like, I didn't know what I really want to do. So have a contractor that says, hey, look, need a safety guy. You want to be a safety guy? I really had no idea what I was getting into. No idea. So 2001, become a safety person. I was hired. He had 3 jobs. I went to the Atlanta airport and 2 powerhouses for a Southern company. I spent about 18 months getting my teeth kicked in, learning from safety pros, learning from the people. You know, this is a fun one, right? You get hired by a general contractor to be a safety person. You start going on job sites. You're like, we don't have a safety guy. Who are you? Like, there was no announcement that, hey, we hired Rob McKinney. He's our new safety director.
You just showed up. You're there.
They start showing up. They're like, who? What? They're calling the office like, who's this guy that says he's a safety director? What? Yeah. It wasn't the most warm reception, shall we say, back in the day. And it was still, I'll argue, 2001 was still the Wild West. I mean, OSHA was around.
Yeah.
Sort of. Depends where you're at, right? Like, the powerhouses were extremely regulated, and I was learning the book as fast as I could. Then you go out on a commercial condo project, and the things you would see back in 2001 to 5.
I believe it.
Yeah, it was a wild time, man.
I think I remember you saying before, like, that was like the era where, like, they were like, hey, you're generally a safe person. You want to be a safety guy? Sure. Like, that was the criteria, you know?
Pretty close. I remember it was the talk of, hey, did you go to college? Yes, sir. So you can read? Yes, sir.
That's it. I think that's what you said. Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
It was unfortunately a sign of the times. There wasn't a high bar to achieve. Like, when I got into business, I met CSPs and ASPs and people, you know, back then there weren't that many college degree programs, but there were a few. So there were people with the pure pedigree, so to speak. However, I was a part of this group that either you were voluntold or there were some superintendents that got hurt and couldn't go back into the field. They're like, well, you want to be the safety guy? I mean, it wasn't a valued position. I'll say this with all respect to the industry. Majority of the companies, it really wasn't a valued position. I say this because I was told things like, hey, you know, you're a necessary evil. Hey, you know, the only reason you have a job is because of OSHA. The insurance people are why you're here. Like, there was always a justification. And I remember so many people in management basically trying to make the point like, well, you know, you cost us money. And I would sit back, and one of the first things I ever really realized in this industry was, you know what? Safety is actually production's best friend, because let me think this through. When we estimate a job, you estimate it to do everything one time under perfect conditions with no rework, no defects, nobody getting hurt or killing themselves or dying on the job site, right? That's how you do that. Who's actually out there looking out to see that that's going to happen?
That's actually capable, like possible, you know?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Because back in the day, man, the only time, I'll be very honest, the call, I got a call from a superintendent. You think it's option A. Hey, Rob, what are you doing, man? We found a new barbecue place. Let's go to lunch. Or, hey, you want to play golf after work? Or you want to break some clays this weekend? Or is it, I need you on my job site right now?
Right.
And you know what that tone of voice means. You're like, option A, somebody dead? No. Something on fire? No. Somebody hurt? Of course.
Yeah, of course.
On the way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the little bit, you know, I've never worked directly. I've worked under the safety umbrella. I'm not a safety guy, admittedly. I have worked with safety folks now for the last several years. And it's the consistent story. That's it. That's the world of safety and what it has been. And I feel like it's been really interesting to watch safety sort of bloom into something new over the last couple years. Is what it looks like, is how, you know, that as it's pushing up against the old stereotypes, like what you just talked about, like, and that's where I think it's interesting how, like, with your story and how you ended up going through safety, but also finding advocacy. Now, for advocacy, you wanted to be a preacher, pastor. That's what you were originally going to school for. What, growing up then, obviously then you had some background where you wanted to support people and advocate for people, and at one point it going into a faith-based thing. I'm a former pastor. That was my initial like, ooh, wait a minute, you and I have a similar thing going there. But for you, like, what was there something in your background and past that kind of laid the foundation for that?
I think it's kind of that inner core. Always care about people. There's something in my human nature of always wanting to help people and fix things that you can. So being a safety person, honestly, the first few years, it was like a badge of honor. Felt like I was anointed by this owner that I work for. And he would always talk about, don't let anybody get killed on the job site. Don't let anybody get really hurt. Like, he had his heart in the right place, and I was trying to follow that lead. And so it was a badge of honor to be a safety person, to look out for life and limb, even with all the massive pushback, right, from middle management and some of the older school roughneck superintendents, right? So being a safety person, you're always trying to do the right thing and help people.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes say things probably you shouldn't say, but they're the right thing to say. But back then, man, prior to the pandemic, talking about mental health and well-being in this industry, that wasn't really happening. The pandemic was not fun. Don't want to live through another one again. It did a lot of horrible things.
Sure.
But I have tried to point out, well, here is a silver lining that I will highlight. It ripped the Band-Aid off of a lot of things in this industry that we did not talk about before. And we still have trouble with a lot of taboos in this industry. Suicide prevention is one that you want to see executives cringe to say the word suicide.
Mm-hmm.
If you talk about mental anything, most people immediately, they already kind of get bristly. And I see people in the audience when I'm speaking, like, I can see the energy change.
Yeah.
Prior to that, there were some forward-thinking companies. It was not unheard of. There are companies that I could tell you that have been doing amazing things for a long time. But let's just say the core of the industry wasn't there. And after that, it's really interesting. When you look at the world of what happened, and then specifically in construction, at the core, let's be honest, a job site during COVID really wasn't that different than before, besides temperature checks, wear a mask, and stay 6 feet away. It didn't really rock a job site too hard. Now, people in the trailer kind of got weird. Who did it rock? The people in the office that had to now go work at home or go to a job site. We moved their cheese. They weren't used to being at home with spouses, pets, loud children, six people in one house on the internet, all trying to zoom into whatever, right? That's who it rocked.
That internet package is really getting the stress test,
Oh, yeah. It was kind of during that time I started realizing a few things. And then, full disclosure. So when I do talks and, I'm trying to convince people about why you should work on your mental health or your mental fitness, is having to come clean and go, all right, the reason I'm telling you about this is let me show you some scars. How do you become an advocate? An advocate that is, quote, if it's even possible, right? If you're considered legitimate or you have the, quote, street cred, like, why do people want to listen to me talk about my experience? You got to be open to raw and honest and go, all right, you want to know why I'm talking to you about your mental health, about why I'm challenging you on your mental fitness? Because I don't want you to do the things that I did. People look at you kind of weird, like, what do you mean? I'm like, all right, let's try 5 panic attacks on for size.
Mm-hmm.
That means to the point I literally thought I was going to die and went to the ER 5 times. I had it happen dozens of times more where I either drank it away, numbed it away. Somehow I shoved it back down. There was probably 8 years of just kind of a spiral, a slow spiral, and having to really sit with and look and go, hey, now granted, I'm 52, so I'm in Gen X. We were raised a certain way. Mm-hmm. And we had these mental models put into us of, the work ethic and rise and grind. And now you see like the 5 a.m. club and all that BS.
Yep.
I have worked 70, 80, 90-hour weeks. And I remember working 90-hour weeks with a badge of honor, like, oh, I'm tough. I can do this forever and ever. Like, why was I giving away 40 hours of my life just because? The weekends, night shift. So becoming an advocate was number 5, was 3 years ago. When I say number 5, so panic attack. Kind of hitting what I would say is rock bottom of like, I'm totally jacked up mentally. My body was a wreck. And coming to that realization of I can't keep doing this to myself, to my wife, to my daughter, to the teams that I'm working with. Mm-hmm. And part of that healing process is then reaching out to guys like you, to a very close, tight group at first of, because people could tell, right? Like I dropped about 10 pounds in weight. I didn't look right for a while. People would be like, dude, what's wrong with you?
Right.
And those that I would trust, I'd tell them, and then they'd say, oh, you got that? I'd show my scar. They'd show me their scar.
Yeah.
And then we'd start comparing notes of like, how long you had that? How's that work out?
Yeah.
And I started doing a little bit more. And then at some point when I was talking with coaches and therapists of like, it's like Dr. Seth talks about, you got to name it to tame it. So I started talking about it openly. Then I started doing talks. Then I started meeting people doing work like me and hearing about, all right, well, what are these efforts? How can we help out? And trying to put my voice behind certain things where, I do a lot of work trying to be an advocate for promoting mental health. That's one level. Yeah. Suicide prevention, it's another level. I've never been suicidal, had suicidal thoughts, but I know a lot of people that have.
Sure.
I've lost people to suicide.
Yep.
And that's a hard one to talk about. So becoming an advocate wasn't like by design. It was realizing first I was a hot mess. Didn't want to be a hot mess. I'm still working on it. I'm not perfect. I still screw up, still have issues, still have blow ups.
Yeah.
But how many people like you and me are willing in the industry to go out and say, there's this purple elephant we got to talk about.
Yep.
You can't keep saying sweep it on the rug is probably too harsh because shockingly in 2025, the amount of talks that I do and the people that I talk with, the people that still, when you tell them, for example, the mental health stats in the country, they look at you with just shock and disbelief like, what? No.
Yeah.
When you tell them the suicide rates in the country or in our industry, they're like, what? No. They didn't know. I mean, to sweep it on the rug, you got to know about it. This is more like we're in an awakening period in this industry still on so many levels, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. You said that you had, so when did you start? You said that your first panic attack happened before the pandemic. You said like 8 years ago.
They started around 2017.
Okay. All right. Then you had a series of them. And then you said, 5 years ago is when you had that, like the bottom point, or was it panic attack number 5?
Number 5 was 3 years ago.
That was 3 years ago.
It was kind of like 2 years apart, 18 months apart. They started happening closer together.
Yeah.
And I was physically reacting to them worse and worse.
My first panic, that's again, more ties between your and my story. My first panic attack happened right after the pandemic. It was right after lockdown was kind of loosening a little bit, and I was in the middle of a Walmart, and I had to run out. I remember I was starting to get tunnel vision. Heart was pounding. I felt just absolute dread, and I left everything in my cart and I ran out. First panic attack I've ever had. And that was when I started realizing like, okay, I think I have bottled up a lot of what I thought I had together, and then realized that it doesn't work that way. You can't just bottle it up. You have to have some way of being able to process this. So, really, no. Okay. So yeah. And then before that, so was that like your on-ramp into, like you said, it wasn't by design, but like it was, that was like your on-ramp into advocacy, into the industry was through your story. Like you realizing like, man, this has impacted me. And now all these other people are coming to you and saying, hey, yeah, again, you showed me your scars, here are mine. And then that was your on-ramp into like, hey, this is something we need to be talking about. And this might actually be an outlet for processing for you. And taking that, as much as you didn't end up going into like, preaching and teaching in a church realm, like in some ways getting up and talking about this thing, we are I don't want to say just the word preaching because there's connotations there, but you're getting the word out there, that there's hope. So
absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That has to be like for you. I mean, that's got to be such a like how has it been for your wellness since you dove into this work of advocacy? I know with Dr. Seth and everything that you've done with him, but like how has that been transformative for you?
I think it's cathartic, right? The more you can see in yourself where you've got the failures, the issues that you can now call them out, name them, working on taming them. And then that growth of, okay, now if I'm going to admit to myself consciously, yeah, I had an anxiety issue. I had anger issues. And then learning, well, how do you fix that? What's going on? What are things to try? Because the first year was just reaching and grasping for any straw. I'd say I had this toolkit And it was a bunch of Band-Aids. They didn't match. They weren't the same brand, the same size. And it was a lot of reaction of like, oh, man, I'd feel once I could identify what anxiety felt like or anger deep, and I mean like rage, like caveman rage, what it felt like when it would start, then I'd say, whoop, 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 whoop. Okay, I'd do some breath work or some EFT tapping. I didn't have rhyme or reason. And so that first year was really research, reading, and trying to understand it like, well, what actually is anxiety? And wait, hold on. 3 years in, now I go, well, we all have anxiety. And anxiety itself is not a bad thing, even if you watch, those new cartoon movies, which are hilarious in some ways, if you look at the Inside Out series.
Oh.
But it's, I was just down at Disney and on a family trip for the first time, and I saw two people walking by me that had that character, anxiety, on a T-shirt, and I was like, well, that's interesting. I'm not
Isn't
sure.
That actually, such an image.
Wow.
Walking around with anxiety on your shirt.
Yeah. Are they advocating? Are you bragging? Are you proud? I don't know. That was
they're a funny character, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like it's such a personal thing with coming from a place of like, I used to wear anxiety on my sleeve, and I had to process not, and it's,
yeah.
We love those movies in our house. We got a little bit too into it. My son got so obsessed with it that he was just like, he was so into identifying every emotion that he was feeling, which is like, that's beautiful. But it was becoming a thing at school where it was like, he was telling everybody like,
yeah. You can't turn around everybody.
Yeah.
Only deal with your head.
Yeah, it was hilarious. So anyway, those movies definitely spoke to us. But yeah, that's the work that you did to process that, and that's what, to me, what I love about it, and like what you did with the breathing exercises and BAMO and everything that you've done is when people talk about coping mechanisms for anxiety and stress, it almost seems like some people, I think, can kind of poo-poo them a little bit, like coping mechanisms. Just like, oh, yeah, well, you can do deep breathing and box breathing and all that stuff. But for some folks, that stuff is the key to getting through those episodes of anxiety. Like, those are those tools, like you said, that can help. Like, I know it's helped you, and I know for many folks around me that's what they do to be able, when they go through those moments. It doesn't mean that the anxiety totally goes away. It's that you have the proper tools and the steps to navigate those moments to get you back to a good firm ground spot. So talk to me about that and how that was such a game changer for you.
It's where the training comes into place. One of the first people that really helped me is my brother, Chad Pearson, with Plexus.
Yeah.
I met him at a conference, and he could tell on photos. And so we sat down, and he was the one that gave me some of the original breath tactics and was trying to show me, he's like, look, this is how I train a fighter in a cage. And so he gave me some of those, and I started using them. And so again, I was in reaction of when I always felt like I was a pot of water on a boil about to boil over. And it was just one thing after another of just trying not to lose my you-know-what. Mm-hmm. And so it was reaction. And as he explained how breath work works and really that brain-to-body connection of it's not just telling somebody, take a breath. And Dr. Seth helped me really take it to the next level of understanding is the mechanics behind the breath, especially like a box breath, just a simple box breath. If you take in that 4 seconds of air, well, you're counting in your head because you're breaking a cognitive loop of whatever you're pissed off or scared or angry or upset about. You're counting to 4, taking in the air, holding the 4. So you're taking 16 seconds away from the world. Mm-hmm. Before it was just like, take a breath. And you're still thinking about whatever pissed you off or made you scared or angry.
Right.
Now it's like, no,
loop.
You're 1, 2, 3, 4. And that is what started me feeling better and realizing, but it took the training. It took 2 guys sitting down going, here's what you got to do. Now, that's still a little bit, I'll say in the reaction phase, where I've been moving into the response was meeting people like Kendra Fox and learning deep breath work. Because I remember when I first started talking to her, and she said, do you do breath work now? And I explained what I did, and she kind of giggled a little bit. She's like, yeah, okay, cool. Let me explain to you what I do. And so she has been working with me on 10, 15, 20-minute sessions, sometimes 45-minute deep breath work sessions of really understanding how you're using the brain, the heart, the body, tapping into the concept she explained to me of coherence. But most people look at me, they're like, you breathe for 45 minutes? I'm like, you breathe the whole time you're alive. This is conscious breathing and different level, but it starts with that first thing that Chad taught me. Then I learned more from Dr. Seth. Then I start working with Kendra. And I've met several other people where I keep getting little pieces, but they fold into a program that I now have rhyme and reason of what I do, why I do it, when I do it. And really more than anything, it's the proactive work that I do when things are calm. I still put a lot of work in so that when it hits the fan, I don't boil over. I don't go nuclear. I'll still every now and then go caveman if my battery's too low. Sometimes it happens, but man, when I say caveman, I was caveman every day for a long time of one little thing my wife or daughter would say or the dog would do, and I'm screaming at somebody at 7:15 in the morning. Yeah. That's not cool.
And it sounds like this has been impactful for you, and that's what I wanted to get at with some of these conversations on this podcast was getting out. Yes, it's impactful in the industry and we need that, but the thing that I think makes for the helpers in this space and the advocates in this space is how it has impacted us personally, like in our lives. And so for you, I know this has impacted even like home life for you. And you've mentioned that before. Talk to me about sort of the transformation in your life ever since you did kind of adopt these things, these tools.
So there's a second layer, right? Like I talk on stage a lot about what I did to myself, how I was not the healthiest that I could be. What I don't normally get into a lot is, all right, while my wheels are coming off and I'm trying to figure this out.
Yeah.
I had one parent, triple bypass heart attack. Another parent, cancer. Some other family members really sick. My wife had an illness. So I am still a raging hot mess of trying to put myself together, and people in my immediate family, we've got mortal things happening.
Yeah.
While this is going on in my head.
Yeah.
That's where the biggest growth, I think, kind of happened. I was actually talking with my mom about 2 weeks ago, when she said, I've really seen a changing the past year with all the work that you're doing. And that was an interesting moment because, my mom's one of the people. She's got cancer. She's 2 years in, surviving.
Wow.
She's got blood cancer. That doesn't go away. They kind of keep it at bay, right?
Yeah.
That's a really hard thing to look at when, us in the, quote, sandwich generation, we've got parents getting older. They're living longer, but they get these weird, crazy diseases. And you got children and a spouse. Everywhere you look around, there's people to help. And when about 2 years, pretty much everyone close to me in my life had something happen.
Yeah.
Physically.
Yeah.
Well, I still got, the raging madman going on in the head. That's not easy to do work on yourself in those conditions.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds like too, so in the midst of all of that, you still were, because a lot of folks, they get so stuck in the anxiety and fear of being surrounded by that. I know I've got my parents, they are well into their 70s. My dad's almost 80. And so they're starting to see some of their friends pass away and the stuff happen. And I'm starting to see them start to process like that life is starting to move pretty quick. It's been moving quick. And now it's like, oh my gosh, this is all happening around me. And I think for a lot of folks and for them, they've started finding ways to be able to squeeze more out of life and get more out of it and live for things and find even new purpose than things that, the stuff that they're doing. Not just activities, but causes that they're pouring into their life at a later stage in life. And I'm like, man, that to me is a lesson that we can learn even when we're in you said you were 52, you said? And I'm 37. So find what does it look like for us to find these things that we live for, not just for the paycheck? That's a moot. That has to happen because we have to survive and take care of our families. But what can we infuse purpose-wise into that grind of life that we know when we wake up in the morning, hey, we're doing something that is healthy for our soul and for ourselves and for our well-being. But then if we have enough in our bucket to pour out for other people in a purpose and a cause, such as advocacy in an industry like ours, man, what does that look like for people to find that? That's really what I wanted to do is, and especially in this conversation, is help other people see you can do that too. Like, you don't just have to live in the grind for the paycheck. You don't just have to do that. That's going to happen anyway. You can find that purpose and that thing that you're living for to make this world a better place as a helper. So that's why I love hearing your story, because man, you dove into it. Like, you went from your own story of processing anxiety and now the stuff that's happened in your family, and you've implemented those tools that have helped you personally, but then now you're also pouring out for other people too. I think that's just amazing.
Appreciate it, man. It wasn't by design again, and I fell into this rut, and then these things happen. And, speaking of pouring, I know how I used to handle a lot of my stress. It was pouring 2 fingers of bourbon or 3 every night. You do that for 15 years, I can tell you it doesn't turn out too good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Our stress management that we are given in this, I'll say in our country, and definitely in our industry, there is this weird love-hate relationship with alcohol first, stimulants, depressants, I could go on and on. There's a lot of debauchery that happens.
Yep.
Doesn't turn out good.
No, and I'm encouraged by the numbers of coming out that like Gen Z, they're not drinking as much. Some of it's because they don't have the money to do it, but also like it's also just not. I think they're starting to see it's not good. It's not good for you. Like it is a deterrent to having a happy, fruitful life. Something having to lean on a vice, which that's my vice too. Alcohol is that's what I've struggled with in the past, and I processed through. After I survived cancer the second time, I bottomed out in my mental health and developed a healthy little drinking problem. Didn't last too long. I climbed out of it, I opened up to my therapist about it, and we processed it, and it's under control, but that's in my DNA as well.
It's in a lot of our DNA, man.
It sure is.
And the sad thing is, in the country, it's the legal thing. If you want to numb yourself, you can get about a gallon at just about any street corner. And it's an interesting in our system where you can get into all the other ways to abuse yourself and numb, and people get so judgmental. And I remember at times sitting back going, you're going to look at me funny for eating a gummy or something, or whatever it is, right?
Right.
And you're pounding 6 scotches.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
12-pack of beer. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's legal. And that's a weird part of our culture.
Yeah, and a lot of folks, especially I think the dudes in our industry too, from a social standpoint, it's like they don't feel like they can like function socially without it. And I think that's something we got to get past is helping
liquid
show
courage.
guys, like, hey, it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. You don't have to be blown out drunk in order to be able to like connect with people. You have to kind of show people and invite people, like guys in their sober, insecure selves, and letting guys know, hey, it's okay. It's okay. And there has to be a normalization of that. I got a guy that I've worked with at Mid-City who's a foreman who I'm actually going to have him on here. He said he wants to jump on, and he has an incredible story where he quit doing the tailgating Ohio State game, just $20,000 a year in booze that he worked out. He worked out the number on it, or his wife worked out the number, and he quit and cut out the folks in his life that were enabling it, and turned his life around, and is now showing the rest of his crew, that it doesn't have to be this way, and that you can go get help and you can talk to somebody anyway. His name's Brian. That's preview coming attraction. You got to hear this dude's story. It's incredible. But that to me, that's all part of normalizing it, man. That's it. It's like people's stories and showing and highlighting that it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way for the betterment of you and the betterment of your family. And then as a trickle down, the betterment of our industry. It doesn't have to be
It's changing. I can tell you, I first started realizing this several years back because when I was doing technology consulting and speaking around the country, you have a few weird conversations in the morning like, what kind of deal did you make with that guy last night? What did you promise? And when you can't remember the deals at the 1 a.m. bar session, that's a very painful feeling of
what did I do?
Okay, I'm going to, and for a while, the crew, we kind of had a running joke of when I was on stage, I would kind of joke with the audience, but we said, hey, look, here's the guru's rules, right? You got to be in bed by midnight. And that was really for us because when we're traveling, jumping time zones, like I knew we needed to take care of our sleep, but I didn't really know. So one was in bed by midnight, and two is we didn't drink brown water on the road. And the audience that knew, they would laugh. And there was really a reason why number two, because those painful conversations, like, what did you promise that person?
Yeah.
Because there wasn't anything written, right? And again, I love this construction industry. It's given me a career. It's what I still do. But you go to these events, if you've been to construction events, and I'll just leave it like this, there's a lot of open bar, right? You can overindulge, and it doesn't turn out good in business. So I will have to give credit and props. I recently went to a national event. First national event that I've gone to, they had a mocktail station.
Awesome.
In Vegas. I'm
awesome.
That's
in Vegas.
Brilliant. In Vegas.
Was that the one that you were at? You were at right now. It's March 21st. You were at back in February, right? You were back in Vegas.
It was the ABC, their national convention, their big 75th, and I have to give them credit with what their safety team is doing, their wellness effort. This is the first time that they had a mocktail station over on the side where you could go get something. And I'll say this, I'm not going to rat anybody out in particular, but I've gone to enough. And this is for the safety professionals. I've gone to enough safety conferences with open bars, and I'm sitting there, and guilty as charged. I was a safety director that like 2 or 3 bourbons a night during the week back in the day, right?
Yeah, right.
Now we're going to safety conferences, and everybody's got their dad or mom card away from home, and I'm talking to people 6 drinks into their night, and we're at a safety conference. Yeah. So I've challenged a few of like, hey, I know I'm probably the odd weird guy in this. Can you get some sodas or some lemonade or tea at the nightly stand? And so one night, a few of these, it's been wine and beer, open bar, or there was a pot of coffee. And I'm thinking, I don't want a cup of coffee at 8 o'clock at night, right? And these are at safety conferences. Now, construction's a whole nother one, and they're there to have a good time. Yeah. I know there's a time and a place, but I fell down that rabbit hole of when it's an open bar, it's real easy to lose count quick because they're not giving that pop top to stick in your pocket or the cork, right? Like that endless glass of wine is not fun. I'll tell you that.
Right. Yeah. I do feel like culture is changing. It's getting there. It's, but again, it's a slow move. It's just like, trying to move conversations around stuff like mental health and suicide prevention. You want to start going after the construction industry's major vice, alcohol. Like, we got to do it, but it's going to take time. So any conversation we can have about that is, I think, a good one to have, because I think that too also is going to save lives too. Dude, thank you for sharing your story too, just about like how you got into all this and your openness and vulnerability. And I mean, kindred spirits, just, you're coming at it from a personal place, and you just want to see your life has been bettered because of these things, but you want to see the industry bettered by this as well. And I love that. Talk to me about SALUS. What do you guys, tell me about what you guys do. How did you get connected to them and what you do over there? And how have you been able to take your advocacy background and plug in over there?
It's really an amazing company. I've got so much respect for our founder, Gabe Guetta. I had technology channels. Ty Kramer, a guy I used to work with back in the day, reached out to somebody that he worked with, and they were talking about some needs that they had. So SALUS is a Canadian-based company. Gabe founded the company up in Vancouver, BC. Successful. Lots of customers. Doing really good. They wanted to come to America. And so I kind of tell the story of they were looking kind of for a tour guide of sorts of who's somebody that could help them with what does the construction landscape look like in the U.S. in regards to safety, and explain that, because let's be honest, safety in Canada is not the safety in the United States or the UK or any other part of the world. So we started having some conversations of like, all right, what are you looking for? and they needed knowledge. How does construction safety work in the U.S.? And I started just with basics of like, well, we're talking GC or trade. We're talking union open shop, self-perform or not.
Yeah.
We got far enough in the conversation, I'm like, you're not understanding what I'm getting at. Oh, okay, cool.
Right.
Well, then there's probably some of that. The construction trade landscape, the associations, the events. The salespeople are asking, where do you find safety people? Because they didn't know. So a lot of what I do is trying to explain how we work. Also talk about product, if you get really nerdy, right? Product market fit. How does their product do what it does? And in the talks with Gabe and Shireen, it was, well, here's this goal I'm really on. And maybe I'm going to get it. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm foolish. Maybe I'm too pie in the sky. The work that I do, the advocacy, right, of wanting to do more in mental fitness. And they said, well, that's cool. We want you to do that, so how about this? And we made our partnership of there's certain things they need my help with, and they're totally cool. When I go out and do talks on mental health, mental fitness, that's not what SALUS sells. We sell safety software, really good safety software. We can digitize any process. We can do amazing things with your safety program and your dashboards, but that's not mental health. And so they help empower my advocacy, and they're happy to have me do those talks, and they're powered by SALUS, right? So whatever trade association I get to go to, SALUS is who's providing me to be there to help try and move that needle, because they got the same issues up in Canada that we do here. It's just a different scale, different trajectory. And so it's a beautiful partnership of I teach, I convey, I help, I open doors, I do what I can in a public role, but behind the scenes, it's a lot of education and different parts of the staff too that, all right, have you ever sold into construction? Nope. All right, well, I start off with those basics. Let's talk, what is a general contractor? What is a trade contractor? Do you understand?
Yeah.
The ones that are based in the Northeast, for example, like, do you know what a union is?
Yeah.
You better.
That's incredible that I love that you use the term, you're the tour guide for them, and it just highlights the differences between construction in Canada is a totally different beast than, what's happening down here in the States, and, having folks like you to be able to. You said too before, we've talked about this before, like well-being in mental health in the construction space up in Canada does not look anything like the movement that has formed here in the United States. So talk to me about what that kind of opportunity can look like, and where do you see like your work and what you're doing with advocacy here in the United States, and what that might end up looking like with your more like involvement even up in Canada and our friends up there?
A lot of it, I think, goes into two main things. There's one, just the size difference. Geographically, that's not there. It's the population. We just have so much more people to deal with down here. That's kind of the bigger issue, is there's more people. The second, as you really lay in there and look at it, the way the Canadian government is set up, and this is one of the things that I've been doing a deep dive of, okay, wait a minute. Up there, by territory, is how things are run. There's not really, and I'm talking strictly in the safety sense, right? They don't have the reciprocal version of OSHA. Each territory, province, however you want to refer to it, they kind of run their own thing, and they're kind of similar, but they're a little bit different. And even inside the territories, the provinces, there's a little bit of stuff going on. So it isn't an overarching structure that you've kind of seen down here in the States. And I think it's because of size, but it's also just the way that they kind of fundamentally operate. Because for us in the States, we have OSHA. There are states that run their own program. For those of you that get nerdy and look at it, well, Washington, Oregon, California, Carolinas, there is differences, and out west maybe a little bit more, but it's all OSHA of a flavor.
Yeah.
The states generally might have a little bit more stringent policies, California, Washington, for example, but you're not talking radical differences. And there's so many, especially in the trades, right, that jump states. Like where I'm based in Atlanta, it's very common for a trade to work they're based in Georgia, but they go over to Alabama, Tennessee, the Carolinas, Florida, Kentucky. We move around a lot, and you got to really kind of be up on it. But with the wellness part, there's also been a lot of benevolence, I think, in the United States. If you look at what's been happening with construction industry for suicide prevention, you look at what Dr. Sally has with the Working Mind Summit, there's been some of that grassroots that has proliferated, but big companies support those.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a weird dynamic of looking across both borders what we do here. But if you start looking even further out, what's going on in the UK? They've got some interesting things going on in the mental health space.
Yeah, or even over in Australia with having,
with MATES.
With the MATES program and what they have going on. It's incredible. Absolutely amazing.
So we all have it kind of going at different levels and flavors.
Yeah.
It's just been a little bit overdue, shall we say, in our industry.
I feel like it's a mix of like, especially in the last few years, I was talking to Sonia Bowman the other day, and I mean, we were just talking about how this movement really, especially in the United States, it's really been kind of going, it got started 10, 15 years ago with Cal Bayer and Dr. Sally and the work that they did with CFMA. So it kind of paved the way, but it really hit traction like within the last 4 or 5 years to really become what it is today, with the number of people who have joined the table, sitting at the table, lending their voices and their experiences and their stories to turn it into what it is today. And I always want to explore this a little bit in every conversation as like, what do you like, where is this thing going? What do you think, what's going to happen next? Like, what does the future of our industry look like few years down the line? We've seen this grow so much in the last 5 years with this well-being movement. What does the next 5 look like?
Hopefully a much healthier workforce across the board, physically, mentally, as some people with those old mental models that don't want to shift, they're going to age out of the workforce or transition out of the workforce, because now we're really having to look at those that are wanting to come in and say, this is a beautiful, amazing industry. There are a lot of places in this industry you don't have to have a college degree, and you can make really good money and take care of your family. Go on wild adventures and build amazing things and do all the stuff. And as the underbelly starts to get kind of removed, because the one thing to keep in mind, people get scared about AI. People get scared about robots.
Right.
We're still, I personally think, a ways away from a building getting put in place by robots. To build and maintain civilization, which is what we do in construction, you still need hands touching material, putting it together. But who wants to come here? Because, man, during the pandemic, it got really weird of how many dollars per hour you could get to stand and, not going to pick on any particular box store or fast food chain, but I remember seeing the ads and hearing the struggle of like, all right, we're going to pay a labor and construction $13, $14 an hour to start, and you're digging ditches or cleaning up, or you're running traffic control, flagging, and you're like, I could get 18 hours to stand in that big box that's air conditioned, climate controlled, clean bathrooms. They give you snacks. Mm-hmm. That's kind of hard. But then you got to think, well, all right, well, let me ask you this question. You could spend a year or two in that big box, and it's climate controlled, and it's got clean bathrooms, and you're going to make that same rate for probably quite a while, versus you come into this industry, and we have so many stories of literally people, Gabe, the CEO that I work for, he started as a laborer, worked his way up in the window industry, was running a company, and then founded a software company. I could tell you so many other cases of people that work their way up through the ranks, or just the majority of the population. You go through an apprentice program, union or open shop, one way or another, right? You come in, you don't know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. You're trained in your craft. You work your way up, foreman, super, even general super at some point, or PM, senior PM, one way or another, you work your way up, and you can go kind of high as you want to go in some ways versus, and not to belittle them, the big box stores, the food stores, the restaurants. Yeah. There are other industries like, that's a lot easier to do, but do you want to do that, like that job right there, and make that money with those benefits for a long time? Or do you want to come over here in this wild, beautiful world, maybe travel the world, travel the U.S., but there is upward mobility available to so many people, but they just don't see it. And again, roads don't pave themselves. Steel doesn't set itself. Yeah. Paint doesn't just get on the wall. There's a lot of opportunity for a while, I believe.
I love, so fundamentally what you're telling me, and I love this, and I love this answer. For the future of our industry, we don't have to feel like there's a caveat that we have to give to the next generation to join our industry. Like when you take the underbelly away, the substance use issues, the suicide, the bullying culture, the you have to be this, the macho, you know, to have a healthier and more inviting industry to the next generation to say, like, no, there's the upsides to this. It's good money. It's great upward opportunity. It's opportunity to see the country and help be a part of building what this country looks like in the future. And we've done a hell of a lot of work on ourselves to make it a healthier version of itself for you and your families. Like, that's beautiful. I think that's really cool. So I want to always infuse hope into these conversations about, like, man, we are heading in that direction. I believe we are heading in that direction because we're having we're talking about it. And I also am seeing, not just talking, I'm seeing action. I'm seeing companies that are stepping up and saying, we want that. And we believe that we can do that. And I think that's really cool. So what's next? What's coming up for you? So you've got, you're doing a whole bunch of traveling these days and you're out chatting this thing up a whole bunch. What's coming up for you?
Working on cutting some more episodes of the Frontline Focus podcast.
Very
we're
good.
having a lot of fun with that. Conversations. Been home for a couple weeks, but I'll be hitting some different conferences and talking mainly on mental health, mental fitness. I'm doing a little bit of stretch goal. Some of my friends at the ABC had asked me about doing AI and safety talks. So I've crafted one there where I really, a little bit of that imposter syndrome of like, who am I to talk about AI, right? And so let's say I did one and I got in the room. I'm like, okay, that's why I'm here. Because when I was polling the room of like, who in here has read about or studied AI and, let's just say the public acknowledgement of their level of AI was pretty low. Then it was one of those moments I'm like, okay, so maybe I do know more than anybody in this room. This is kind of still weird and humbling. So I still do talks on technology. I'm doing talks on AI right now to really just kind of do basics of like, do you know what it is? Do you realize you're actually being either, you can look at it two ways. Either you're currently using AI or I'm afraid it's probably more 50-50. AI is using you and you don't quite realize it. And you need to understand when AI is using you.
Yep.
That's the one that gets people really scratching their head looking at their phone. I'm like, yeah, you got a smartphone? Let's talk about AI. Which flavor do you have?
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk to me about your Instagram feed and what pops up in there that you've never searched before for some reason.
Yes.
It's you ever drive down the road and a certain brand of coffee offers you a coupon to swing on in there? That doesn't happen by itself,
That was not a coincidence, my friend.
Right? So that talk's kind of fun now to be like, I can show you some products that do really cool stuff for construction, but it's really going back to that preach and teach mentality of like, let's just explain what AI really is at a very common level. So that talk, the mental fitness talk, where one of the things I've been trying to help draw the line in that is really challenging our industry, because I ask people in the audience of like, what do you think of physical health or nutritional health? Or when I say, what do you think about mental health? And I get a very certain answer, and I challenge them back and say, I want you to really think about the term mental health versus mental illness. I personally think our country and our industry has really gotten those backwards.
Yeah.
And I try and draw the line of like, okay, some people do have mental illness. They're diagnosed. They have things either physically wrong, chemically wrong, trauma. There's some reason. Something's going on, and that's awful, and we want to help them. They're in treatment for reasons. But the training that I found, I was one of those ones of I needed some training. So I share training now and try and really draw that line of if you need treatment, you should get treatment. I'm not telling you not to get it.
Right.
But you got to understand the difference of the two and the reason and the why. Because I really looked at a lot of things and talked to people, and I'd ask them like, so you've got X, right? You take what? Okay. Well, does that work for you? And man, I hate to say it, the majority of the time I was like, well, so it's a weird thing to really try and just put out there. Like, let's talk about health versus illness. That's two different things. And our industry needs resources for understanding them and provide that training, because we have to be resilient in this industry. We have to bounce back. Construction, it's not easy. Let's be honest. I mean, physically, it's not easy work. Mentally, it's not easy work. And I didn't come into the industry with a strong set of tools to understand how to deal with it. So trying to help spread that over an age gap of 20s to 60s, men, women, basically every flavor of the rainbow, and be like, here's a little piece. Maybe it helps you out.
We got a lot of work to do, but the thing that I think with this mission that we're on, we're all on this common mission here, all these folks at the table, is that we all have stories that have led us here, that have brought us here, and as what allows us to be able to connect with the 20 to 60-year-old folks who they have stories too. We just got to connect with them within their story, and I think that's why. And thank you so much today for your vulnerability and telling your story, and I just appreciate all the work that you do.
Hey, man, thank you for the opportunity to share. Appreciate what you're doing. It takes a lot of people to share these stories and provide that help. And like you used the word a few times, and I've seen a shirt, and I think I'm going to have to go ahead and get it on Amazon, of hope dealer.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to have to get that T-shirt, start rocking that on a stage and be like, I'm not here saying I can change your world. I don't have a silver bullet. But if at least you'll listen, if you want to listen, you can do some cool stuff.
And to deal some hope. I love it.
Hope dealer.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate you. Thank you for sharing today. And for all of you listening, keep tuning into this. Share with your friends. Let folks know, hey, there's room at the table for you as an advocate and a helper in industries like construction and others like it. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you later.